The rope burns on her wrists had started bleeding again. Naomi could feel the warm trickle down her hands as she sat in the cold basement, her body aching from being in the same position for 6 hours. The twins, little Amelia and Nathan, were huddled against her, their small bodies shaking from cold and fear. She had tried to keep them calm, singing softly despite her parched throat, despite the gag that had only been removed an hour ago when Mrs. Patterson decided the children needed to eat the stale crackers she'd thrown down the stairs. "It's okay, babies," Naomi whispered, her voice cracking. "Someone will come. Someone will help us." But she didn't believe it. She'd been working for the Patterson family for 2 years, and in that time, she'd learned that Mrs. Caroline Patterson was capable of things most people couldn't imagine. It had started small, verbal abuse, impossible tasks, deductions from her already meager pay for imagined mistakes. Then it escalated. Being locked in her room overnight. Having her phone taken away. Being forbidden from leaving the property on her days off. This was the worst yet. Caroline had flown into a rage that morning when she found Nathan had drawn on the wall with crayons. Never mind that he was only 4 years old. Never mind that children do such things. Caroline had blamed Naomi for not watching him closely enough, for being lazy, for being worthless. Then she'd done something Naomi never expected. She tied Naomi up and brought the children down to the basement with her. "You want to be with them so badly?" Caroline had hissed, her perfect face twisted with hatred. "Then stay here with them. All of you. Maybe a few hours in the dark will teach everyone a lesson about following my rules." That had been at 9 in the morning. Now, according to the small window near the ceiling, the sun was starting to set. Naomi's legs had gone numb. Amelia had wet herself hours ago, and the smell made Naomi want to cry. Nathan kept asking when Daddy would come home, and each time, Naomi had to lie and say soon, very soon. The basement door opened. Naomi's heart jumped. Please let it be Mr. Patterson. Please let him be home early from his business trip. But it was Caroline's heels clicking down the stairs. She had a bottle of water and more crackers. "Still alive, I see," she said, her voice light, almost cheerful. "Good. Can't have you dying on me." That would be hard to explain. "Mrs. Patterson, please," Naomi begged. "The children need proper food. They need bathroom. They need their beds. Whatever I did wrong, punish me, but please." "Shut up." Caroline's voice turned sharp. "You don't tell me what my children need. You're nothing. You're just the help. You're lucky I even let you in my house." She tossed the water bottle at Naomi's feet, too far for her to reach with her hands tied. "Figure it out," Caroline said, and turned to go back upstairs. That's when they heard it. The garage door opening. A car pulling in. Caroline's face went white, then red. "He's not supposed to be back until tomorrow," she muttered. She looked at Naomi with pure venom in her eyes. "You say one word, make one sound, and I will make your life a living hell. Do you understand me? I'll call immigration. I'll tell them you stole from me. I'll make sure you never work again." Naomi said nothing. She just held the twins tighter. Caroline ran up the stairs, locking the basement door behind her. Upstairs, they could hear voices. Mr. Patterson's deep tone, sounding tired. Caroline's high-pitched greeting, too cheerful, too bright. Naomi's heart pounded. She had to try something. She had to. "Nathan," she whispered. "Baby, I need you to do something for Naomi, okay? Can you be a big brave boy?" The 4-year-old looked up at her with red-rimmed eyes. "What, Miss Naomi? When Daddy comes looking for you, I need you to call out really loud. Can you do that? Can you yell for Daddy?" Nathan nodded, his little face serious. They waited. Upstairs, the voices got louder. Mr. Patterson was asking where the children were. Caroline was saying they were sleeping, that they'd had a long day. He was saying he wanted to see them, to kiss them goodnight. "Now, Nathan," Naomi whispered. "As loud as you can. Daddy." Nathan's voice rang out, high and desperate. "Daddy, we're down here. Daddy, help." Amelia joined in, her voice shrill with fear. "Daddy, Daddy." The voices upstairs stopped. Then there were footsteps, running. The basement door rattled. "It's locked," Mr. Patterson's voice came through. "Caroline, where's the key? Why is this door locked? Why are my children in the basement?" "They're not in the basement, darling, they're. I can hear them. Nathan. Amelia. Daddy's coming." There was a crash. Mr. Patterson had broken through the door. His footsteps thundered down the stairs. And then he stopped. Naomi looked up and saw his face in the dim light. She saw the exact moment he registered what he was seeing, his nanny, tied to a support beam, bleeding, exhausted. His children, filthy and terrified, pressed against her. The water bottle on the floor, just out of reach. The bucket in the corner that Caroline had provided for bathroom needs but was too far away for any of them to use. His face went through several emotions. Confusion. Disbelief. Horror. And then, finally, rage. "What?" he started, his voice shaking. "What is this? What the hell is this?" He rushed forward, pulling a pocket tool from his pants to cut through the ropes binding Naomi's wrists. The moment she was free, she gasped in pain as blood rushed back into her hands. Mr. Patterson scooped up both twins, holding them close, his hands shaking as he checked them over. "Naomi," he said, his voice tight. "Tell me what happened. Tell me everything." Caroline appeared at the top of the stairs. "Honey, I can explain." "Don't," Mr. Patterson said, his voice like ice. "Don't say another word." He looked at Naomi, and she saw something in his eyes she'd never seen before. Belief. After 2 years of being invisible, of being dismissed, of being less than human in this house, someone finally saw her. "Tell me," he said again, gently this time. "Please. Tell me everything." And for the first time since she'd taken this job, Naomi felt like maybe, just maybe, someone would finally listen. Mr. Patterson, Julian, he'd insisted she call him Julian after that night, had taken them all to the hospital first. Despite Caroline's protests, despite her tears and her explanations, he'd called 911. The paramedics had checked Naomi over, treating her rope burns, giving her fluids for dehydration. They'd examined the twins, who were physically fine but traumatized. A social worker had come. Then the police. Now, 3 days later, Naomi sat in Julian's lawyer's office, still trying to process that any of this was real. Caroline was in jail, denied bail because the prosecutor argued she was a flight risk. Julian had filed for divorce and an emergency custody order. And Naomi was being asked to tell her story again, this time for the legal record. "Start from the beginning," the lawyer, a sharp-eyed woman named Barbara Torres, said kindly. "When did the abuse start?" Naomi took a breath. "About 6 months after I started working there. At first, everything seemed fine. Mrs. Patterson was demanding, but I figured that was normal for rich people. She wanted things done a certain way. She had a lot of rules." "What kind of rules?" Barbara asked, taking notes. "The children weren't allowed to be messy. Not even a little bit. If they spilled something, even water, I had to clean it up immediately. If they left a toy out, I had to put it away within minutes. She said she couldn't stand disorder. She said it made her anxious." Julian, sitting in the corner of the room with his head in his hands, made a sound. Naomi glanced at him and felt a pang of something, not quite sympathy, but not entirely indifferent either. He'd been traveling so much for work, he'd genuinely had no idea what was happening in his own home. "Go on," Barbara prompted. "After a while, the rules started being about me too. I wasn't allowed to eat until the family had finished eating. I wasn't allowed to sit down during the day unless the children were napping. I wasn't allowed to use my phone during work hours, which was fine at first, but then she started saying that my work hours were basically all the time. She took my phone and kept it in her safe. She said I could have it on Sundays, but then Sundays became days when she needed me to work extra because Julian was home and they wanted family time without the children underfoot." "She kept your phone from you?" Barbara's pen moved quickly across her notepad. "Yes, For the last 8 months, I only had my phone 1 day a week, if that. She said I was wasting time talking to my family instead of focusing on the children. But the truth was..." Naomi's voice caught. "The truth was she didn't want me telling anyone what was happening." What was happening? Barbara asked gently. Naomi looked down at her hands. The rope burns were bandaged now, but they still hurt. She started hitting me. Just slaps at first. If I did something wrong, or if she was in a bad mood, she'd slap me across the face and tell me I was stupid, that I was lucky to have this job, that she could replace me in a heartbeat with someone who actually appreciated the opportunity. Julian made that sound again, like he was in pain. Naomi continued, not looking at him. Then she started withholding my pay. She'd say I broke something, or I made a mistake, and she'd deduct money. One time she deducted $500 because Nathan fell and scraped his knee. She said it was my fault for not watching him. But he was playing in the yard, and he just tripped. He's a little boy. They fall sometimes. Did you ever try to leave? Barbara asked. I tried once, about 4 months ago. I packed my bag and told her I was giving 2 weeks' notice. Naomi paused, the memory still sharp. She threatened to call immigration and tell them I was working illegally. But I have a work visa. Everything's legal. She knew that, but she said it didn't matter. She said she'd make something up, that she'd say I stole from her, that I'd be deported before I could prove my innocence. She said even if I won eventually, it would take years, and I'd spend all that time unable to work, unable to send money home to my mama who's sick. Naomi's voice broke on the last word. She'd been sending money home to Jamaica every month to help with her mother's medical bills. That's why she'd taken this job in the first place. That's why she'd stayed. Your mother is ill? Barbara asked. She has diabetes. Bad. She needs insulin, needs regular doctor visits. My salary was paying for that. If I lost this job, if I got deported, Mama would. She couldn't finish the sentence. Julian stood up abruptly and walked to the window, his back to them. His shoulders were shaking. Barbara gave him a moment, then turned back to Naomi. Tell me about the day Julian found you. What led to that? Naomi explained about Nathan drawing on the wall, about Caroline's rage, about being tied up in the basement. She explained how Caroline had come down periodically to make sure they were still alive but had refused to give them adequate food or water, had refused to let them use the bathroom properly. She told me that if I ever told anyone, she'd destroy me, Naomi said. And I believed her. I've seen how powerful people operate. Who's going to believe the nanny over the wife? Who's going to take my word over hers? I believe you, Julian said, turning around. His eyes were red. Naomi, I am so sorry. I am so incredibly sorry. I should have known. I should have seen something. Naomi looked at him directly for the first time since entering the office. You were never there, she said simply. You worked 70, 80 hours a week. You traveled constantly. You came home and your wife told you everything was fine, and you believed her because why wouldn't you? The house was always clean. The children were always well behaved when you were around. I was always smiling because I had to be. But there must have been signs. There were, Naomi interrupted. But you didn't want to see them. I lost weight. I stopped smiling as much. The children started being clingy with me and avoiding their mother. But you were too busy building your empire to notice what was happening in your own home. The words hung in the air. They weren't said with anger, just with weary truth. Julian looked like he'd been punched. Barbara cleared her throat. Julian, why don't you give us a moment? I need to go over some details with Naomi alone. He nodded and left the room, closing the door quietly behind him. Barbara leaned forward. Naomi, I want you to know something. This is not your fault. None of it. Caroline Patterson is an abuser, and abusers are very good at hiding what they do. They're good at making their victims feel responsible, feel trapped. You did what you had to do to survive, to protect your mother, to keep going. There is no shame in that. Naomi felt tears threatening and blinked them back. What happens now? Now we build the case. The criminal case against Caroline is strong, the physical evidence, the medical reports, the testimony from the paramedics and police who saw the scene. She's looking at serious charges. Kidnapping, false imprisonment, assault, child endangerment. She could go to prison for a long time. Good, Naomi said, And meant it. Julian wants to help you, Barbara continued. He wants to make sure you're taken care of, that you have everything you need to start over. I know you might not want to accept anything from him, but I'm going to encourage you to think about it pragmatically. You've been through trauma. You'll need time to heal. You'll need resources. Naomi shook her head. I don't want his guilt money. It's not guilt money. It's what you're owed. You worked for 2 years under horrific conditions. You saved his children's lives. If you hadn't been there in that basement, keeping them calm, keeping them safe, things could have been so much worse. You deserve compensation for what you've been through. Naomi was quiet for a long moment. I'll think about it, she finally said. That's all I ask. Barbara handed her a card. This is my direct number. You call me day or night if you need anything. I'm going to make sure Caroline Patterson pays for what she did. But more importantly, I'm going to make sure you get justice. Naomi took the card, holding it carefully. Justice. It was a word she'd stopped believing in somewhere along the way. But maybe, just maybe, it was possible after all. The cameras had been Naomi's secret weapon, though she'd never imagined she'd actually need to use them. 3 months before that terrible day in the basement, she'd used her limited Sunday phone time to order 3 small cameras online. They were the kind advertised for home security, tiny enough to hide, equipped with motion sensors and cloud storage. She'd paid for them with the little bit of money she'd managed to save, money she'd hidden in her room because Caroline had started demanding access to her bank account for household accounting purposes. Now, sitting in a different lawyer's office, this one belonging to the district attorney, Naomi watched as they pulled up the footage on a large screen. Julian sat beside her, his face growing paler with each clip. The first video showed Caroline screaming at Naomi in the kitchen. The date stamp read 3 months earlier, mid-afternoon. Caroline had found a water spot on a wine glass and was holding it inches from Naomi's face. Are you blind? Are you stupid? Look at this. Caroline's voice was shrill on the recording. I have guests coming tonight, and you give me dirty glasses? I'm sorry, Mrs. Patterson. I'll rewash them all. The slap came fast, Caroline's palm connecting with Naomi's cheek hard enough that the sound echoed in the recording. Naomi's head snapped to the side, but she didn't cry out. She just stood there, hand going to her face. You'll rewash every glass in this house. And you'll do it without dinner. Maybe hunger will teach you to pay attention. Julian's breath was coming faster now. The prosecutor, a man named Robert Hayes, paused the video. Mr. Patterson, are you okay to continue? Julian nodded stiffly. Show me everything. I need to see it all. The next video was worse. It showed Caroline backing Naomi into a corner, her finger jabbing at Naomi's chest. You think you're so smart, don't you? You think because you went to some community college in your little island that you're educated? You're nothing. You clean toilets for a living. That's all you'll ever be. Naomi in the video said nothing, just stood with her eyes down, taking the verbal assault. Look at me when I'm talking to you. Caroline grabbed Naomi's face, nails digging into her cheeks. You will never be anything more than the help. Never. And if you ever try to leave, if you ever think about going to my husband with your lies, I will ruin you. Do you understand? Yes, Mrs. Patterson. Say it. Say you're nothing. A pause. Then, quietly, I'm nothing. Again. I'm nothing. Good. Now get back to work. Julian stood abruptly and walked to the corner of the room, his hand over his mouth. Naomi didn't look at him. She kept her eyes on the screen as Hayes pulled up another clip. This one showed Caroline withholding Naomi's paycheck, tearing it in half. You broke my favorite vase. That vase cost $3,000. Your paycheck this week is $2,000. You still owe me $1,000. Maybe next week you'll be more careful. But Mrs. Patterson, that was an accident. Nathan was running. Are you arguing with me? Are you actually arguing with me right now? Caroline's face was twisted with rage. Fine. No pay for 2 weeks. And you'll work extra hours to make up for my vase. There were more clips. So many more. Caroline forcing Naomi to work 18-hour days. Caroline making Naomi sleep in the unheated basement because she claimed Naomi's room needed to be fumigated, though no exterminators ever came. Caroline accidentally spilling hot coffee on Naomi's arm and then laughing about it. Where were these cameras hidden? Hayes asked. One in the kitchen, disguised as a smoke detector. One in the hallway leading to my room, hidden in an air vent. One in the twins' playroom, inside a teddy bear I bought at a thrift store and modified. Naomi's voice was steady. She'd watched these clips dozens of times now, building up her immunity to the pain they caused. And Mrs. Patterson never found them? No, sir. She wasn't expecting me to fight back. She thought I was too scared, too trapped. And I was. But I was also smart enough to protect myself, just in case. Hayes nodded approvingly. This footage is damning. With this, plus your testimony, plus the physical evidence from the basement incident, we have an airtight case. Caroline Patterson is going to prison. How long? Naomi asked. With all the charges. We're looking at 15 to 20 years, possibly more. Kidnapping alone carries a minimum of 10 years in this state. Add in the assault charges, the child endangerment, the false imprisonment, she's not getting out anytime soon. Something in Naomi's chest loosened. 15 to 20 years. Her mother might not even live that long, given her health. By the time Caroline got out, Naomi would be in her 50s. She'd have had time to build a whole new life. Julian returned to his seat, but he didn't sit down. He stood behind the chair, gripping the back of it like it was the only thing keeping him upright. How did I not know, he said, more to himself than anyone else. How did I live in that house and not know? Because she didn't want you to know, Hayes said pragmatically. Abusers are very good at compartmentalizing. She was one person with you and another person with Naomi. It's a common pattern. I should have known anyway. Julian looked at Naomi. You tried to tell me once, didn't you? About 6 months ago. Naomi remembered. She'd approached him in his study one evening, gathering all her courage. Mr. Patterson, could I speak with you about something? He'd been on his phone, scrolling through emails. Can it wait, Naomi? I have a 7 a.m. flight to Singapore. It's important. Is someone dying? No, but. Then it can wait. We'll talk when I get back. But he'd been gone for 3 weeks, and by the time he returned, Caroline had threatened Naomi's mother again, and Naomi had lost her nerve. I was busy, Julian said now, his voice hollow. I was always too busy. Yes, Naomi agreed. You were. The simple acknowledgement seemed to hurt him more than anger would have. He nodded slowly and sat down, his shoulders slumped. Hayes pulled up one more video. This is from the morning of the incident. We need you both to watch this, even though it's difficult. The jury will need to see it. The video showed Caroline dragging Naomi down the basement stairs by her hair. Naomi was trying not to scream, trying not to wake the twins who were still sleeping upstairs. Caroline threw her against the support beam and began tying her hands with rope she'd clearly prepared beforehand. You think you're so good with my children, Caroline hissed. You think they love you more than they love me. Well, let's see how much they love you after spending a day in the dark with you. Let's see how much they trust you when you can't even protect them. She'd gone back upstairs and returned with the twins, both confused and frightened. Mommy, what's happening? Amelia had asked. Miss Naomi needs to be punished for being bad, Caroline said sweetly. And you two need to learn what happens when people are bad. So you're going to sit with her and think about how to be good children. But I want breakfast, Nathan whimpered. You'll eat when I say you can eat. The video ran for another few minutes, showing Caroline's systematic cruelty. How she'd placed the water just out of reach. How she'd laughed when Amelia started crying. How she'd told them all that if they made too much noise, she'd leave them down there for days. When it ended, the room was silent. This is evil, Julian finally said. This isn't just abuse. This is evil. Yes, Hayes agreed. And this is why we're pursuing the maximum sentence. Caroline Patterson is a danger to society. She cannot be allowed to hurt anyone else. Naomi felt a grim satisfaction. For so long, she'd felt powerless. But she'd been smart. She'd gathered evidence. She'd protected herself in the only way she could. And now, finally, that evidence would speak for her in a way her voice alone never could. "When is the trial?" she asked. 2 months. "We're fast-tracking it given the severity of the charges and the strength of our case. Caroline's lawyer will try to negotiate a plea deal, but we're not accepting anything less than 15 years. "Good," Naomi said again. It was becoming her favorite word. The safe house wasn't what Naomi expected. She'd imagined something grim and institutional, but instead, she found herself in a small but comfortable apartment in a quiet neighborhood across town. It had a bedroom, a bathroom, a kitchen with new appliances, and a living room with actual furniture. Barbara Torres had arranged it through a non-profit that helped domestic workers escape abusive situations. "You'll be safe here," Barbara explained as she showed Naomi around. "The address isn't public record. Caroline doesn't know where you are. Julian doesn't even know where you are." "Good," Naomi said. She'd been firm about that. Julian meant well, she could see that now. But he was part of the life she needed to leave behind. His guilt, his desire to help, his horror at what his wife had done, none of that changed the fact that his house had been her prison for 2 years. "He wants to set up a fund for you," Barbara continued. "Medical expenses, living costs, educational expenses if you want to go back to school. Plus compensation for what you endured. We're talking about a substantial amount, Naomi. Enough to give you real freedom." Naomi sat down on the couch, running her hand over the soft fabric. "How much?" $2 million. The number hung in the air. Naomi had never imagined that much money. Her entire salary for 2 years had been $80,000, most of which Caroline had withheld. $2 million was more than she'd earn in her entire lifetime. "That's too much," she said. "It's not." Barbara sat down beside her. "Think about it practically. You have medical trauma that will require therapy, possibly for years. You've lost 2 years of your life to abuse. You have a career gap that will be hard to explain to future employers. You deserve compensation for all of that. And frankly, Julian can afford it. His net worth is over $800 million. $2 million is pocket change to him. It's guilt money," Naomi said, echoing what she'd said before. "It's justice money," Barbara corrected. "It's what you're owed. And more importantly, it's your ticket to real freedom. With that money, you can finish your degree. You can help your mother. You can start a business if you want. You can do anything. Don't let pride rob you of the opportunity to build a real life." Naomi thought about her mother, struggling to pay for insulin in Jamaica. She thought about the associate degree she'd left unfinished when she'd run out of money. She thought about the dreams she'd had once, before Caroline Patterson had tried to break her. "I'll take it," she said. "But I have conditions." "Name them." "I never want to see Julian or his children again. No check-ins, no updates, no contact. I want a complete break. Whatever happens in his life, whoever he becomes, it's not my concern anymore." "Done," Barbara said without hesitation. "What else?" "I want it in writing that this isn't charity. This is compensation for damages. I don't want anyone to be able to say I took advantage of the situation or that I extorted him. The settlement agreement will make that clear." "Anything else?" "I want Caroline to know I'm the reason she's going to prison. I want her to know that I was smart enough to beat her." Barbara smiled. It wasn't a kind smile. It was the smile of a woman who'd seen too many victims and was glad to see one fighting back. "Oh, she'll know. The prosecution is building the entire case around your testimony and your evidence. Caroline Patterson will go to prison knowing that the woman she thought was powerless destroyed her entire life." They spent the next hour going over paperwork. Naomi signed document after document, her hand steady. This was her exit plan, her escape route from the nightmare her life had become. When Barbara finally left, Naomi stood in her new apartment and let herself feel it. Freedom. Real freedom. No one to tell her when to eat, when to sleep, when to speak. No one to hit her or demean her or make her feel like nothing. She walked to the kitchen and opened the refrigerator. It was stocked with food, real food, not stale crackers and moldy bread. She made herself a sandwich with fresh turkey and cheese and lettuce. She ate it slowly, savoring every bite. Then she called her mother in Jamaica. It was the first time she'd been able to call without time limits, without someone monitoring her calls. Naomi? Her mother's voice was worried. Baby, what's wrong? You never call on a Tuesday. Mama, I'm okay. Actually, I'm better than okay. I have something to tell you. She explained everything. The abuse, the cameras, the basement, the arrest. Her mother cried, and Naomi cried with her, but they were different tears now. Not tears of despair but tears of relief. You're safe now, her mother asked. I'm safe, Mama. And there's more. I'm getting money. A lot of money. Enough to pay for your medicine for the rest of your life. Enough for me to finish school. Enough for us to be okay. Her mother was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, My smart girl. I always knew you were strong. I always knew you'd survive. I did more than survive, Mama. I won. They talked for an hour, making plans. Naomi would send money for her mother's medical bills immediately. She'd visit Jamaica for a few weeks once the trial was over. Then she'd come back and enroll in college to finish her degree. After she hung up, Naomi walked to the bedroom and lay down on the bed. It was soft, so much softer than the thin mattress she'd slept on in Caroline's house. She stretched out, spreading her arms wide, taking up space. No one was going to yell at her for resting. No one was going to tell her she was lazy. She thought about Caroline, sitting in a jail cell right now. Caroline, who'd thought she was so powerful, so untouchable. Caroline, who'd thought Naomi was nothing. I'm not nothing, Naomi said out loud to the empty room. I never was. She closed her eyes and, for the first time in 2 years, fell into a deep, dreamless sleep. The campus of Metropolitan Community College was alive with students when Naomi walked through the gates 6 weeks later. Young people hurried to classes, clustered in groups on the lawn, laughed and argued and lived their lives. Naomi felt ancient compared to them, even though she was only 32. She'd lived lifetimes in the past 2 years. Naomi Porter? A woman with kind eyes and graying hair approached her. I'm Professor Angela Grant. I'm your advisor. Naomi shook her hand, still getting used to being treated with basic respect. Thank you for meeting with me. Of course. Let's go to my office and talk about your academic goals. Professor Grant's office was cluttered with books and papers, comfortable in its chaos. She poured them both coffee and settled behind her desk. So, you were pursuing an associate degree in social work before you had to pause your studies. You completed 3 semesters, correct? Yes, I ran out of money and had to start working full-time. Professor Grant looked at Naomi over her reading glasses. I've been briefed on your situation by the college administration. What you've been through is horrific, and I want you to know that we're here to support you. We have counseling services, academic support, financial aid, whatever you need. I have funding now, Naomi said. I can pay for my courses. That's wonderful. So let's talk about your path forward. You need 30 more credits to complete your associate degree. After that, would you want to pursue a bachelor's? Naomi hadn't let herself think that far ahead. A bachelor's degree seemed like an impossible luxury. I don't know. Maybe. I'd like to help people who've been through what I've been through. Domestic workers, people who are trapped in bad situations. Then social work is perfect for you. And I have to say, Naomi, you have something most social workers don't have when they start out. What's that? Real understanding. You've been there. You know what it feels like to be powerless, to be afraid, to think no one will believe you. That empathy, that lived experience, it's invaluable in this field. Something in Naomi's chest expanded. For so long, her suffering had felt meaningless, just pain for the sake of pain. But maybe it could be something else. Maybe it could be a tool, a way to help others avoid what she'd gone through. I'd like to start classes next semester, she said. Let's get you registered. They spent the next hour mapping out her course schedule. Naomi would take 4 classes in the spring semester: social work ethics, psychology of trauma, sociology of inequality, and English composition. It was a full load. But she was ready. She needed this. She needed to fill her mind with something other than memories of Caroline's cruelty. When she left Professor Grant's office, she had a folder full of syllabi and a student ID card with her picture on it. Naomi Porter, student. Not Naomi Porter, victim. Not Naomi Porter, the help. Just Naomi Porter, a woman with a future. She decided to walk around campus, getting familiar with the layout. The library was a 4-story building with floor-to-ceiling windows. The student center had a coffee shop where students sat with laptops and textbooks. The quad had trees and benches and a sense of possibility. Hey, watch out. A young woman on a bicycle swerved around her, laughing apologetically. Sorry. I'm late to class. Naomi watched her go, pedaling furiously toward the science building. She couldn't remember the last time she'd felt that carefree, that unburdened. Maybe she never had. Her phone buzzed. It was a text from Barbara Torres, trial date set for February 14, Valentine's Day. How fitting. Naomi allowed herself a grim smile. Caroline's day of reckoning was coming. In less than 3 months, she'd sit in a courtroom and tell her story in front of a judge and jury. She'd look Caroline in the eye and make sure everyone knew exactly what she'd done. She texted back, "I'll be ready." The next few weeks fell into a rhythm. Naomi attended therapy twice a week with Dr. Lisa Freeman, a black woman in her 50s who specialized in trauma. At first, the sessions were hard. Naomi had gotten so good at pushing down her feelings, at just surviving, that actually examining her pain felt overwhelming. You don't have to process everything at once, Dr. Freeman told her during their 3rd session. Healing isn't linear. Some days you'll feel strong. Some days you'll feel broken. Both are okay. I just want to stop feeling afraid, Naomi admitted. I'm safe now. Caroline's in jail. But I still look over my shoulder constantly. I still flinch when I hear footsteps behind me. That's trauma. Your nervous system was in survival mode for 2 years. It doesn't just switch off because the threat is gone. We'll work on grounding techniques, on helping your body understand that you're safe now. They practiced breathing exercises. They talked about Naomi's childhood in Jamaica, about the good memories before everything became about just getting by. They talked about Naomi's dreams for the future. I want to matter, Naomi said during one session. Not in a big, famous way. But I want my life to mean something. I want to help people who are where I was. You already matter, Dr. Freeman said gently. You've always mattered. Caroline tried to make you believe you didn't, but that was her lie, not your truth. Naomi started volunteering at a local domestic workers' rights organization called Fair Work Alliance. She answered phones, helped with filing, listened to women call in with stories that made her stomach turn. So many women trapped like she'd been. So many women afraid to speak up. You're good at this, the director, a woman named Rachel Kim, told her after Naomi had spent an hour on the phone with a Filipina nanny who was being paid below minimum wage and threatened with deportation. You make people feel heard. I know what it's like not to be heard, Naomi said simply. In January, classes started. Naomi threw herself into her coursework with fierce determination. Her social work ethics professor, a man who'd spent 20 years as a social worker before teaching, nodded approvingly at her first paper. This is excellent work, Naomi. Your analysis of power dynamics in helping relationships shows real insight. In psychology of trauma, she learned the names for what had happened to her. Learned about cortisol and hypervigilance and dissociation. Learned that her responses to abuse weren't weakness but survival. In sociology of inequality, she wrote a paper about domestic workers' rights that her professor called publishable quality. And in English composition, she wrote an essay about resilience that made her professor cry. Would you consider submitting this to our student literary magazine? The professor asked. Naomi thought about it. Did she want her story out there for everyone to read? Yes, she decided. Yes, I would. The essay was published in the February issue, just 2 weeks before the trial. It was titled The Woman Who Was Nothing, and it told her story without names, without identifying details, but with raw honesty. It ended with these words, They tried to make me believe I was nothing. But nothing doesn't fight back. Nothing doesn't gather evidence. Nothing doesn't survive. I was never nothing. I was always something. I was always someone. And now, finally, I believe it. The essay went viral on the college's social media. Students she'd never met stopped her in the hallways to tell her how moved they were. Professor Grant hugged her when they ran into each other at the library. "You're making a difference," she said. "Already." And Naomi felt it. For the first time in her life, she felt like she mattered. The courthouse was cold despite it being Valentine's Day. Naomi sat in the witness room, wearing the simple blue dress Barbara had helped her pick out. Nothing too flashy, nothing too plain. She needed to look credible, sympathetic, real. "You ready?" Barbara asked, sitting down beside her. "I've been ready for 2 years." The trial had started 3 days earlier. They'd spent those days on jury selection and opening arguments. The prosecutor, Robert Hayes, had laid out the case methodically. The defense attorney, a slick man named Patrick Sullivan, had tried to paint Caroline as a woman having a mental health crisis, a woman who loved her children and made a terrible mistake. A mistake, Naomi had muttered to Barbara when she heard that. A 2-year-long mistake. Now it was Naomi's turn to testify. She would be the prosecution's star witness, the person who would make or break this case. The videos were powerful, but her testimony would bring them to life. "Remember what we practiced," Barbara said. "Answer the questions directly. Don't volunteer extra information. Look at the jury when you speak. If you need a break, just say so." Naomi nodded. She'd been preparing for this moment for weeks. She knew what she needed to say. She knew how important this was. A bailiff opened the door. "Ms. Porter, we're ready for you." The courtroom was smaller than Naomi expected. The jury box held 12 people, 7 women, 5 men, a mix of ages and races. The judge, a black woman in her 60s named Judge Martinez, sat behind a raised bench. And there, at the defense table, sat Caroline Patterson. Naomi hadn't seen her since that night in the basement. Caroline looked different now. Her hair wasn't perfectly styled. Her clothes, while nice, weren't the designer outfits she used to wear. Her face was drawn, older somehow. When Naomi walked in, Caroline's eyes followed her, and for just a moment, Naomi saw fear there. "Good," Naomi thought. "Be afraid. Please raise your right hand," the bailiff said. "Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?" "I do." "Please state your name for the record." "Naomi Marie Porter." "Please be seated." Naomi sat in the witness box, her hands folded in her lap. She could feel the eyes of the jury on her, assessing, judging. She sat up straight, met their gazes one by one. Robert Hayes approached. "Ms. Porter, thank you for being here today. I know this is difficult. Can you please tell the jury how you came to work for the Patterson family?" Naomi took a breath and began. She told them about coming to the United States from Jamaica 5 years ago. About her mother's illness. About finding the job listing for a live-in nanny. About the interview, where Caroline had seemed professional, even warm. "Did Mrs. Patterson seem like a good employer at first?" Hayes asked. "Yes, sir. For the first few months, everything was fine. She had high standards, but I didn't mind that. I wanted to do good work." "When did things change?" "About 6 months into the job. She started criticizing everything I did. The way I folded the towels. The way I cut the children's sandwiches. She said I was sloppy, that I needed to pay more attention." "How did this criticism make you feel?" "At first, I thought she was right. I thought I needed to work harder. But then the criticism turned into insults. She started calling me stupid, worthless. She said I was lucky she even let me work in her house." Hayes walked Naomi through the escalation. The first slap. The withholding of pay. The confiscation of her phone. The threats about immigration. "Did you ever consider leaving?" Hayes asked. "Yes, sir. I tried once. She threatened to have me deported and to make sure my mother in Jamaica lost access to her medical care." "How did she threaten your mother's medical care?" I was sending money home every month to pay for my mother's insulin and doctor visits. Mrs. Patterson said if I left, she'd make sure I couldn't send that money anymore. She said my mother would die because of me. A woman in the jury box put her hand to her mouth. Another juror shook his head. Hayes pulled up the first video on a large screen facing the jury. Ms. Porter, can you tell the jury what we're about to see? That's footage from a camera I hid in the kitchen. It shows Mrs. Patterson hitting me because she found a water spot on a wine glass. The video played. The slap echoed in the silent courtroom. Naomi watched the jurors' faces as they watched her younger self stand there and take it, head bowed, silent. They played clip after clip. The verbal abuse. The psychological torture. The withholding of pay. By the time they got to the basement footage, 3 of the jurors were crying. Ms. Porter, Hayes said gently, can you walk us through what happened on the morning of January 15th? Naomi told them about Nathan's crayons. About Caroline's rage. About being dragged down the stairs and tied up. About the twins being brought down to join her. About the 6 hours of hell. What were you thinking during those hours? Hayes asked. I was thinking about keeping the children calm. About making sure they didn't panic. And I was thinking that if we didn't get out, if Mr. Patterson didn't come home, we might die down there. Mrs. Patterson had that look in her eyes. Like she'd gone somewhere else. Like she didn't care what happened to us. What look? The look she got when she hurt me. When she enjoyed hurting me. Patrick Sullivan objected. Speculation, Your Honor. I'll allow it, Judge Martinez said. The witness is describing her perception of events. Hayes asked a few more questions, then turned Naomi over for cross-examination. Patrick Sullivan stood up. He was younger than Hayes, sharper dressed, and he had the kind of smile that didn't reach his eyes. Ms. Porter, you claim my client abused you for 2 years. Yet you stayed. Why? I explained that. She threatened my mother. But you had a work visa. You were in the country legally. You could have found another job. With what references? With what work history gap? I had no phone to look for jobs. No way to contact anyone. She isolated me. You managed to buy cameras. You managed to hide them. Sounds like you weren't that isolated. Naomi felt her temper flare but kept her voice even. I used 1 day a week when I had limited phone access to order those cameras. I spent my hidden savings on them. That's not the same as having freedom. Hidden savings? So you were stealing from my client? Objection. Hayes was on his feet. Badgering the witness. Sustained, Judge Martinez said sharply. Mr. Sullivan, rephrase. Sullivan smiled. Ms. Porter, isn't it true that you're here today because you want money from my client's husband? I'm here because your client kidnapped and tortured me. You're getting $2 million from Mr. Patterson. Quite a windfall, isn't it? That's compensation for 2 years of abuse. Or it's payment to make sure you testify against my client. Objection. Hayes was furious now. This is outrageous, Your Honor. Mr. Sullivan, one more comment like that and I'll hold you in contempt, Judge Martinez warned. The settlement is not on trial here. But Sullivan had planted the seed. Naomi could see it in one juror's face, doubt. The question of whether she was doing this for money. She looked directly at that juror, a middle-aged white man in the back row. I'm here because what Mrs. Patterson did was evil. I'm here because she needs to face consequences. The money doesn't change what happened. It doesn't erase the scars. All it does is give me a chance to rebuild my life. That's all I want. Justice and a chance to start over. The juror's face softened. He nodded slightly. Sullivan tried a few more times to shake her testimony, but Naomi held firm. She'd lived through Caroline's abuse. She could handle a lawyer's questions. After 2 hours, Judge Martinez called for a break. Barbara met Naomi in the hallway. You were perfect, she said. Absolutely perfect. The jury believes you. Naomi leaned against the wall, suddenly exhausted. How much longer? Hayes will do redirect, clean up anything Sullivan messed with. Then we're done. You'll never have to testify again. Good, Naomi said. That word again. Her talisman. When they reconvened, Hayes did his redirect, reinforcing the key points. Then Naomi was dismissed. She walked out of the courtroom without looking back at Caroline. She'd said what she needed to say. The rest was up to the jury. The verdict came 3 days later. Naomi was in her social work ethics class when her phone buzzed with the text from Barbara, guilty on all counts. She's going away for 18 years. Naomi excused herself and went to the bathroom. She locked herself in a stall and let herself cry. Not tears of sadness, but tears of relief so profound it felt like her bones were melting. 18 years. Caroline would be 63 when she got out. Naomi would be 50. She'd have built a whole life by then. She texted back, "Thank you for everything." Barbara's response came immediately, "You did this. You saved yourself. I just helped with the paperwork." That night, Naomi allowed herself a small celebration. She bought a bottle of sparkling cider and made herself her favorite Jamaican meal, jerk chicken, rice and peas, fried plantains. She ate slowly, savoring every bite, and when she was done, she raised her glass to the empty apartment. "To new beginnings," she said out loud. "To being free." The next morning, she went back to her routine. Classes, therapy, volunteering at Fair Work Alliance. Rachel Kim called her into her office after a particularly long shift. "I've been watching you with the callers," Rachel said. "You have a gift for this work, Naomi. You make people feel safe enough to tell their stories. That's rare." "I just listen," Naomi said. "It's more than that. You validate their experiences. You don't judge. You don't rush them. I want to offer you a paid position. Part-time for now, since you're in school. But I think you could be a real asset to this organization." Naomi felt warmth spread through her chest. A real job. Not cleaning houses or watching children while their parents ignored her. A job using her mind, her empathy, her hard-won understanding of what it meant to survive. "I'd love that," she said. "Good. We can start next week. I'll have HR draw up the paperwork." Naomi walked out of that office feeling 10 feet tall. She had a purpose now. She was helping people. She was making a difference. In her psychology of trauma class, she wrote a paper about the long-term effects of domestic servitude and abuse. Her professor, Dr. Thompson, asked her to present it at a local social work conference. "Your analysis is groundbreaking," Dr. Thompson said. "Especially your section on how systematic dehumanization affects the victim's sense of self. This needs to be shared with practitioners in the field." The conference was intimidating. Naomi stood behind a podium in a hotel ballroom, looking out at 100 social workers, therapists, and advocates. Her hands shook as she clicked through her slides. But then she started talking, and the words flowed. She talked about power dynamics, about isolation, about the ways abusers make their victims complicit in their own imprisonment. She talked about the importance of believing victims, of understanding that staying isn't weakness, it's survival. When she finished, the applause was thunderous. People lined up afterward to talk to her, to ask questions, to thank her for her perspective. One woman, a social worker from a non-profit that helped trafficking survivors, pressed a business card into Naomi's hand. "If you ever want to consult with us, we'd be honored. Your insights could help so many people." Naomi pocketed the card, feeling like she was walking on air. At Fair Work Alliance, she started running a support group for domestic workers who'd experienced abuse. 8 women came to the first meeting, nervous and uncertain. They sat in a circle in the community room, and Naomi asked each of them to share their names and one thing they wanted people to know about their experience. "I'm Gloria. I'm from El Salvador. I want people to know that we're not victims. We're survivors. I'm Priya. I'm from India. I want people to know that abuse doesn't always leave visible scars. I'm Mai. I'm from China. I want people to know that we have rights, even when people tell us we don't." One by one, they spoke. And one by one, Naomi watched them sit up a little straighter, speak a little louder. They were reclaiming their voices, their power, their sense of self-worth. "I'm Naomi," she said when it was her turn. "I'm from Jamaica. And I want people to know that surviving isn't the end of the story. It's the beginning. The group met every week. They talked about their experiences, their fears, their hopes. They practiced negotiating with employers. They learned their rights under labor law. They supported each other through bad days and celebrated each other's victories. Gloria found a new job with an employer who respected her. Priya reported her former employer to the labor board and won back pay. Mai enrolled in English classes at the community college. "You're changing lives," Rachel told Naomi one day. "These women come in defeated and leave with hope. That's because of you." "It's because of all of us," Naomi corrected. "We're stronger together." In April, Naomi finished her spring semester with a 4.0 GPA. All A's. Professor Grant hugged her when they met to plan for the fall. "I'm so proud of you," she said. "You've overcome so much, and you're not just surviving, you're thriving." Naomi thought about that word. Thriving. Was she? She still had nightmares sometimes. She still flinched at raised voices. She still struggled with trusting people. But she was also happy. She had purpose. She had a community. She had a future. "Yeah," she said, realizing it was true. "I guess I am." In May, she visited her mother in Jamaica for 2 weeks. It was the first time she'd been home in 3 years. Her mother met her at the airport, and they cried and held each other for a long time. "Look at you," her mother said, pulling back to study Naomi's face. "You look free." "I am, Mama. I really am." They spent 2 weeks cooking together, going to the beach, visiting old friends. Naomi told her mother everything about school, about Fair Work Alliance, about the support group. Her mother listened, her eyes shining with pride. "You took your pain and made something beautiful from it," her mother said. "That's real strength." On her last night in Jamaica, they sat on the porch watching the sunset. "You know," her mother said, "I used to worry that the world would break you. But it didn't. It tried, but you're stronger than it is." "I learned from you," Naomi said. "You never gave up, even when you were sick, even when things were hard. You showed me how to keep going. And now you're showing other people. That's the best revenge, baby. Not hurting the people who hurt you, but living so well they become irrelevant." Naomi thought about Caroline, sitting in prison. She hadn't thought about her in weeks. Caroline had become a footnote in her story, not the main chapter. "Yeah," Naomi said. "The best revenge is living well." Back in the States, summer brought new opportunities. Naomi took 2 classes, one online, one in person, and increased her hours at Fair Work Alliance. She was officially promoted to Advocate Coordinator, overseeing the support groups and managing the crisis hotline. She also got news about Caroline. Barbara called with an update. She tried to appeal the sentence. Claimed ineffective counsel, judicial bias, the whole 9 yards. It was denied. She's serving the full 18 years, no possibility of parole for at least 12. "How's she doing in there?" Naomi asked, surprised at her own curiosity. "Not well, from what I hear. She's in a medium security facility. She's been written up multiple times for refusing to follow rules, for trying to bribe guards. She's in seg right now for assaulting another inmate." Naomi felt nothing. No satisfaction, no pity. Just nothing. Caroline was paying for her crimes. That was enough. "And Julian?" Naomi asked. "The divorce was finalized last month. He got full custody of the twins. He's been taking them to therapy. From what I understand, they're doing better. He's cut back on work to be more present. That's good. Those kids deserved better. He asks about you sometimes," Barbara said carefully. "Tell him I'm fine. And tell him to stop asking." "Will do." Naomi hung up and went back to her textbook. She was reading about trauma-informed care practices, taking notes for a paper she was writing. Caroline's life, Julian's life, they weren't her concern anymore. In July, something unexpected happened. A local news station reached out to Fair Work Alliance wanting to do a story on domestic worker abuse. Rachel asked if Naomi would be willing to be interviewed. "You don't have to use your real name," Rachel said. "We can keep you anonymous. But your story is powerful, Naomi. It could help a lot of people. Naomi thought about it. Did she want to put herself out there like that? Did she want to be known as a victim? But then she thought about Gloria and Priya and Mai and all the other women in her support group. She thought about the women who called the hotline in the middle of the night, desperate and afraid. Maybe her story could reach them. Maybe it could help. I'll do it, she said. And I'll use my real name. I'm not hiding anymore. The interview aired on the evening news. Naomi sat in her apartment and watched herself on TV, telling her story calmly and clearly. She explained about the abuse, the evidence she'd gathered, the trial. She talked about Fair Work Alliance and the resources available for domestic workers. If you're going through something like this, she said, looking directly at the camera, please know that you're not alone. You're not powerless. You can survive this. You can build a life on the other side of it. I did. You can too. Her phone exploded with messages. Friends from college. Women she'd met at the conference. People she'd never met saying they'd seen the interview and wanted to thank her for speaking out. One message stood out. It was from a woman named Zara. I saw your interview. I'm in a situation like yours. I don't know what to do. Can you help? Naomi called her immediately. They talked for 2 hours. Zara was a Filipina woman working for a family in the suburbs. Her employer was withholding her pay, threatening her visa status, not letting her leave the house. It was Naomi's story all over again. Listen to me, Naomi said firmly. You're going to get through this. I'm going to help you. But first, you need to document everything. Can you get access to a phone? They made a plan. Naomi connected Zara with resources. Within 2 weeks, Zara had escaped her abusive employer and filed a report with the labor board. She came to Naomi's support group and met the other women who'd survived similar situations. You saved my life, Zara told Naomi after her first meeting. No, Naomi said. You saved your own life. You made the decision to reach out. You did the hard work of leaving. I just showed you it was possible. But Zara wasn't the only one. After the news interview, Naomi heard from dozens of women. The support group grew to 20 regular members. Fair Work Alliance saw a 300% increase in calls to their hotline. You started a movement, Rachel said, shaking her head in amazement. Women who never would have come forward are coming forward now because they saw you. Naomi didn't know how to feel about being the face of something. She just knew she had to keep going, keep helping, keep speaking out. In August, she got a call from a publisher. They'd seen her essay in the college literary magazine and her news interview. They wanted to know if she'd be interested in writing a memoir. I don't know, Naomi said. I'm not a writer. You are, though. Your essay was beautiful. Your story is important. And we think a lot of people would benefit from reading it. Naomi asked for time to think about it. She talked to Dr. Freeman in therapy. How would writing a book about your trauma affect you? Dr. Freeman asked. I don't know. Part of me wants to move on, you know? To not be defined by what happened. But another part of me thinks that if my story can help people, I have a responsibility to tell it. There's no wrong answer here, Naomi. This is about what feels right for you. That night, Naomi thought about all the women she'd talked to over the past few months. Women who'd told her that her story gave them hope, gave them courage, showed them a way out. If a book could reach even more women, wasn't that worth it? She called the publisher back the next day. I'll do it. But I need to do it my way. I need to tell the truth, all of it. No sugarcoating, no making it palatable for people who don't want to face the reality of what domestic workers experience. That's exactly what we want, the publisher said. Naomi started writing in September, working on the manuscript between classes and her job at Fair Work Alliance. It was harder than she expected, reliving those memories, putting them on paper. But it was also cathartic. She was taking control of her narrative, telling her story her way. Dr. Freeman helped her manage the emotional toll. Remember, you're not that person anymore. You're writing about her, but you're not her. You survived. You're on the other side now. By the end of fall semester, Naomi had completed another semester with straight A's and had a first draft of her manuscript. The book would be called Not Nothing, a domestic worker's story of survival and justice. It's powerful, her editor said. Raw and honest and hopeful all at once. This is going to help so many people. Naomi hoped so. She'd survived hell. The least she could do was light the way for others still trapped there. The book was published in March, a little over a year after Caroline's conviction. Naomi held the first copy in her hands and felt something she couldn't quite name. Pride. Accomplishment. Vindication. How does it feel? Barbara asked. She'd come to the book launch at a local bookstore. Surreal, Naomi admitted. A year ago, I was just trying to survive. Now I've written a book. The bookstore was packed. Over 100 people had come for the launch. Naomi stood behind the podium, looking out at the crowd, and started to read the opening chapter, the scene in the basement, her lowest moment. When she finished, the room was silent. Then someone started clapping. Then everyone was clapping, standing, some people crying. The Q&A session went for over an hour. People asked about her healing journey, about Fair Work Alliance, about how they could help domestic workers in their communities. One woman raised her hand and said, "I employ a housekeeper. What can I do to make sure she feels safe and respected?" "Ask her," Naomi said simply. "Ask her what she needs. Pay her fairly. Give her breaks. Treat her like a human being, not a servant. It's not complicated. It just requires basic human decency." The book tour took her to 6 cities over 2 months. At every stop, women came up to her with tears in their eyes, telling her their own stories. Some were domestic workers who'd experienced abuse. Others were people who'd survived different kinds of trauma but saw themselves in Naomi's story. In Houston, a woman pressed a folded piece of paper into Naomi's hand. "I was planning to end my life," she whispered. "I read your book last week. You showed me there's a way forward. Thank you for staying alive." Naomi hugged her, both of them crying. This was why she'd written the book. This was why it mattered. The book became a bestseller. Not a massive hit, but it sold steadily, week after week. It was being taught in social work programs. It was being discussed in book clubs. It was making a difference. With the book advance and the money from Julian's settlement, Naomi was financially secure in a way she'd never imagined possible. But she didn't change her lifestyle much. She moved to a slightly bigger apartment. She bought a car. She sent money to her mother. The rest she saved or donated to Fair Work Alliance and other organizations helping domestic workers. In April, Naomi graduated with her associate degree in social work. Professor Grant was there, cheering louder than anyone when Naomi crossed the stage. So was Rachel from Fair Work Alliance. So was her entire support group, wearing matching t-shirts that said Survivor Squad. Her mother flew in for the graduation. Afterward, they went to dinner at a nice restaurant, and her mother raised her glass. "To my daughter. Who survived. Who thrived. Who turned her pain into purpose." Naomi clinked glasses with her mother, feeling tears prick her eyes. To second chances. She'd been accepted into a bachelor's program at State University, starting in the fall. She was going to get her BSW, then her master's. She was going to become a licensed social worker. She was going to spend the rest of her life helping people who'd been where she was. In June, Fair Work Alliance asked Naomi to become their new director. Rachel was retiring, and the board unanimously voted for Naomi to take over. "I don't know if I'm ready," Naomi said. "You're more than ready," Rachel assured her. "You've been running this place for the past 6 months anyway. I'm just here to sign papers at this point." Naomi accepted the position. Her first act as director was to expand the support groups, opening 3 new locations around the city. Her second was to launch a legal advocacy program, connecting domestic workers with pro bono lawyers who could help them file complaints and pursue justice. The organization grew rapidly under her leadership. They secured grants from major foundations. They got media attention. They helped hundreds of women leave abusive situations and find better jobs. But Naomi never lost sight of why she was doing this. Every woman who came through Fair Work Alliance's doors was her younger self, scared, trapped, desperate for someone to believe her. She made sure every single one of them was heard, was believed, was helped. In August, something completely unexpected happened. Naomi was invited to speak at a UN conference on domestic workers' rights in Geneva. She almost said no, it seemed too big, too important for someone like her. But then she remembered that she wasn't just someone. She was a survivor. She was an advocate. She had a voice that mattered. She gave a speech to an audience of international delegates about the need for better protections for domestic workers worldwide. She talked about the ways power and vulnerability intersect. She talked about her own experience and how it represented millions of women around the world. The speech was picked up by international news outlets. Suddenly, Naomi wasn't just known in her city or her country. She was known globally. "How does it feel to be famous?" her mother asked during one of their weekly phone calls. "I'm not famous," Naomi laughed. "I'm just visible. And that's good. The more visible I am, the more visible the issues I care about become." She used her platform deliberately. She wrote op-eds about labor rights. She appeared on podcasts talking about trauma and healing. She testified before her state legislature about bills that would protect domestic workers. And through it all, she kept going to therapy. She kept attending her own support group for trauma survivors. She kept doing the work of healing, because she knew that helping others didn't mean she was done helping herself. "You've come so far," Dr. Freeman said during one session. "Do you remember that first day you came in here? You could barely look me in the eye." "I remember," Naomi said. "I thought I was broken beyond repair. And now I know I was never broken. I was hurt, yeah. But hurt isn't the same as broken. I'm scarred, but I'm strong. I'm healing, but I'm also healed enough to help others heal." Dr. Freeman smiled. "That's beautiful, Naomi. That's real wisdom." That night, Naomi sat in her apartment and thought about where she'd been and where she was now. 2 years ago, she'd been tied up in a basement, terrified and hopeless. Now she was the director of a non-profit, an author, a speaker, an advocate. She'd turned her trauma into a tool for change. Caroline Patterson was still in prison. Julian was still raising his kids. But Naomi was free. Truly free. Not just physically free from abuse, but emotionally free from the belief that she was nothing. She was something. She was someone. And she always had been. 3 years after that night in the basement, Naomi stood in front of a new building in downtown, watching as workers installed the sign, the Porter Center for Domestic Workers' Rights and Advocacy. Her center. Named after her. Funded by grants, donations, and her own investment from the book profits and settlement money. It was a 3-story building with offices for staff, meeting rooms for support groups, a legal clinic, a resource library, and a crisis shelter for domestic workers who needed immediate refuge from abusive situations. Everything Naomi had wished existed when she was trapped in Caroline's house. "It's beautiful," Rachel said, standing beside her. She'd come out of retirement to serve on the center's advisory board. "It's necessary," Naomi corrected. "But yeah, it's beautiful too." The center opened in September with a big community event. Over 500 people came, domestic workers, advocates, lawmakers, journalists. Naomi gave a speech about the center's mission, about her vision for a world where no domestic worker had to endure what she'd endured. "We can't change the past," she said. "But we can change the future." This center is proof that survival isn't the end of the story. It's the beginning. We survive, and then we fight to make sure others don't have to survive the same things. We turn our pain into power. We build something better. The applause was deafening. That night, alone in her office at the center, Naomi allowed herself to feel the enormity of what she'd accomplished. She'd started with nothing, less than nothing, really, considering how broken she'd felt in the aftermath of abuse. And she'd built this. A place of healing, of justice, of hope. Her phone rang. It was an unknown number, but she answered anyway. "Ms. Porter. This is Emily Patterson." Naomi's blood went cold. Patterson. Julian's daughter. No, wait, Emily wasn't the twins' name. Amelia and Nathan were the twins. I'm Julian Patterson's sister, the woman clarified, sensing Naomi's confusion. I know you wanted no contact with the family, and I respect that. But there's something I need to tell you. My brother passed away last month. Heart attack. He was only 42. Naomi sat down heavily. Julian was dead. She didn't know what she felt. The twins are with me now, Emily continued. I have custody. They're doing well, all things considered. They're in therapy, they're thriving. But they've been asking about you. They remember you. They remember how you protected them that day. I don't think, Naomi started. I'm not asking you to see them, Emily interrupted gently. I know you need boundaries. Amelia wrote you a letter. She's 9 now. She wanted me to read it to you. Would that be okay? Naomi's throat was tight. Okay. Emily's voice was soft as she read, Dear Miss Naomi, I don't know if you remember me, but I remember you. You kept me and Nathan safe when we were scared. You sang to us in the basement. You told us stories. You made us feel less afraid. I'm sorry our mom was so mean to you. I'm sorry for what happened. I just wanted to say thank you for being kind to us. And I wanted you to know that we turned out okay. Nathan and I are doing good in school. We're happy. I hope you're happy too. Love, Amelia. Naomi was crying. She hadn't expected this, hadn't expected to still feel anything about those children. Thank you for reading that to me, she managed. Naomi, Emily said, I know what my sister-in-law did to you was unforgivable. The whole family was horrified when we found out. We had no idea. None of us. I just want you to know that the twins don't blame you for anything. They're grateful you were there. And so am I. You saved their lives that day. After Emily hung up, Naomi sat in the quiet office for a long time. Julian was dead. The twins were growing up. Life had moved on. She thought about writing Amelia back, but decided against it. It was better this way. The children were safe and loved. That was enough. She didn't need to be part of their story anymore, and they didn't need to be part of hers. Instead, she opened her laptop and started working on a new project, a training program for employers who hired domestic workers. How to treat them with respect. How to recognize signs of abuse. How to create safe working conditions. This was her life now. This work. This purpose. In November, Naomi got a call from a woman named Isabella, who'd seen her TED Talk online. I run a similar organization in California, Isabella said. I wondered if you'd be interested in partnering on a national initiative. We could create a network of centers like yours across the country. I'd love that, Naomi said immediately. They spent the next several months planning. By spring, they'd established the National Domestic Workers Justice Network, with centers in 12 cities and plans to expand to 20 more. Naomi became the national spokesperson, traveling the country to train staff, meet with workers, advocate for policy changes. It was exhausting but fulfilling. She was making a difference on a scale she'd never imagined possible. In May, she got news about Caroline. Barbara called with the update. She's sick. Cancer. They're giving her medical parole to die outside of prison. Naomi felt nothing. Where will she go? Her mother's house, from what I hear. She has maybe 6 months. Okay. Do you want to? I don't know, do you want to see her? Some survivors find closure in confronting their abuser one last time. No, Naomi said firmly. I got my closure 3 years ago when the jury said guilty. I don't need anything from her. Not her apology, not her regret, nothing. She's irrelevant to my life now. Fair enough. Caroline Patterson died 3 months later. Naomi saw the obituary online but didn't read it. She had no interest in how Caroline's family chose to remember her. She had no interest in Caroline at all. Instead, she focused on the future. She'd started a graduate program in social work. She was writing a second book about building social movements. She was dating someone, a kind man named Thomas who worked as a teacher and who made her laugh and who understood when she needed space. She'd also started the process of adoption. A little girl named Zoe, 4 years old, from the foster system. Zoe had been through her own trauma, neglect, multiple foster placements, uncertainty about the future. When Naomi met her at the adoption agency, Zoe had looked at her with big, wary eyes. "Are you going to send me back?" Zoe had asked. "No," Naomi had said firmly. "I'm going to love you and keep you safe. That's a promise." The adoption was finalized in December, right before Christmas. Naomi brought Zoe home to the apartment she'd moved into earlier that year, a real home, with 3 bedrooms and a backyard and space for a family. "This is your room," Naomi said, showing Zoe the bedroom she'd decorated with care. "You can decorate it however you want. It's yours. You're safe here." Zoe looked around, then up at Naomi. "This is really mine. Forever." "Forever," Naomi confirmed. That night, after tucking Zoe into bed, Naomi stood in her living room and looked around. At the photos on the walls, her graduation, the center's opening, her mother's last visit. At Zoe's stuffed animals already scattered around. At Thomas on the couch, reading a book. At the life she'd built. She thought about that night in the basement, when she'd been at her lowest point. She'd thought her life was over. She'd thought she'd never escape, never be happy, never be free. But she'd been wrong. She'd escaped. She'd found happiness. She'd found freedom. More than that, she'd found purpose. She'd turned her trauma into a tool for change. She'd helped hundreds of women escape situations like hers. She'd built a movement. She'd created a family. Caroline Patterson had tried to convince her she was nothing. But Naomi had proved her wrong. She'd proved that she was someone. That she mattered. That her life had value and meaning and purpose. She was a survivor. An advocate. An author. A leader. A mother. She was Naomi Porter, and she'd built a beautiful life on her own terms. And that, she thought with satisfaction, was the best revenge of all, not revenge against anyone, but vindication for herself. Proof that she'd always been worthy, always been strong, always been something. She'd always been enough.